This is The Minimum Commitment, film theory in small doses. Some men don't just walk into a room. They arrive, as if the room has been waiting. I'm Don Lawler, film scholar, audio obsessive, and someone who knows that sometimes the most convincing performance is the one everyone wants to believe. Let's get into it. There's a reason Tombstone feels different. It moves with confidence, speaks in clean lines, frames its characters as if they've already been absorbed into history. You don't weigh their choices. You don't interrogate the framing. You accept it. This is what the Western myth looks like when it's running at full strength. When it doesn't just tell you a story, it convinces you of one. Or maybe more importantly, when the myth becomes so sure of itself, it finally believes its own performance. We're going to expand the theory of performance identity just a bit more. In The Wrestler, performance was survival. The role kept the man alive, even as it consumed him. In Jesse James, performance became myth. Stories written and rewritten until the man vanished inside the legend. Here, in Tombstone, performance doesn't just accompany identity. It becomes its public shape. Wyatt Earp, played by Kurt Russell, performs the role of a lawman so thoroughly, so calmly, so insistently that in the eyes of the town and in the logic of the film, that's exactly what he is. The performance doesn't follow the title. It earns it. And Doc Holliday, played by Val Kilmer, may be the clearest example. His body is failing, but his performance is immaculate. He plays charm. He plays danger. He plays control. The coughing and the weakness are there, but the persona never slips. What Tombstone understands is simple and unsettling. If you perform something with enough conviction, people stop asking if it's real. They only ask if it's compelling. Watch how these characters move. Wyatt Earp doesn't hurry. He enters conflict like he's walking into a verdict that's already been written. His stillness does as much work as any line of dialogue. It tells you this man is inevitable. Doc Holliday, by contrast, is all deliberate flair. The drawl, the posture, the tilt of the head. These are rehearsed without feeling artificial. They signal a man who knows he's being watched and leans into it. This isn't realism in the naturalistic sense. It's construction. The film isn't trying to mimic how people actually speak or move in a chaotic gunfight. It's showing you how legends behave in the stories we tell about them. The myth isn't interrogated. It's staged as if it's already settled fact, and the film carries that certainty with remarkable ease. The form of the film quietly reinforces this. Clean compositions, clear, readable lighting, balanced staging, where everything is visible, everything makes sense. This is the opposite of what we saw in The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. There, the image is often unstable, uncertain, the sense that history is slipping out of our hands even as we try to frame it. Tombstone refuses that uncertainty. You're not struggling to interpret the frame, you're being handed the meaning. The shots don't simply contain the characters, they endorse them. Now, listen to the language. Doc Holliday's lines are not just quotable. They are performative statements of self.
Wretched slugs. Don't any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.
That's a declaration. In that moment, the line doesn't just sound good, it fixes him in our imagination. That sentence becomes the shorthand for his entire presence. That's part of the film's power. These characters don't simply have identities. They speak themselves into existence. Their dialogue isn't there to tell us what they feel. It's there to establish how they will be remembered. And the world inside the film cooperates. People react as if these lines matter, as if they are already legendary. That's why the dialogue lands with such force. It participates in creating identity. When violence happens in Tombstone, it arrives with a strange kind of cleanliness. The staging is organized. The moral math is legible. The film works hard to make the gunfire feel justified, even when it's brutal. This is where the Western myth is at its strongest. When violence feels like a necessary instrument of order rather than a collapse into chaos. The editing, the framing, and the score all converge on the same idea, that this had to happen. And that's where things get slippery. Because once violence is framed as inevitable, it can feel righteous even when it should feel unnerving. The film knows that if it frames the moment as resolution, most of us will accept it that way. All of this crystallizes in the OK Corral sequence. Notice how the street seems to widen, almost like a stage being cleared. The men take their positions like actors hitting their marks. The silence here doesn't feel empty, it feels charged. The space between these men holds the weight of everything that's been performed up to this point. Their reputations, their threats, their alliances. Wyatt steps forward. Doc follows. The blocking is simple, but it carries a sense of preordination. You feel not just that a gunfight is coming, but that this gunfight has to happen. It's the scene that confirms everything the film has been promising about who these men are. In this version of the West, violence isn't a breakdown of order. It's how order is expressed. It's the moment where the performance of heroism stops being talk and turns into action. Tombstone doesn't set out to dismantle the Western myth. In fact, it polishes it. It gives you heroes who seem unwavering, violence that feels purposeful. A world where identity isn't just discovered, it's crafted, curated, and then lived as if it were inevitable. But that clarity carries a cost. Because Once a performance is fully accepted, once the town, the camera, and the audience all agree, there's no room left for doubt. And without doubt, it becomes harder to ask uncomfortable questions about what's being justified. Who gets to be called a hero? And whose stories are quietly pushed out of the frame? The film doesn't have to lie to shape the legend. It just has to be selective. To show just enough of the world for the myth to hold. Before the Western starts to fracture and question itself, Tombstone shows us what the myth looks like when it still works. When performance and belief line up so perfectly, the legend feels like the only possible version of the truth. That's your thought for the day. Minimum commitment, maximum meaning. See you next time. The Minimum Commitment is produced, recorded, and edited by Don Lawler. Music by Bobby Quick.